Okay, hello everyone, and welcome back to Fuck Wellness. I'm Lara,
I'm Mallory.
And I'm Makena.
and today we have our first guest with our very, very, very hot topic of a new theme, masculinity. I
You
feel
are
like
forgetting Ryan though, Lar.
Oh, my bad.
So
okay.
easily forgettable.
Okay. Actually, I have a justification. I feel like Ryan is
It's like part of the pod.
He's the pod.
one of us. Yeah. Like
Ryan is Ryan is Mallory's fiance.
Mallory's fiance who's been on the pod a lot. So like you can see how my brain might have done that this morning.
I won't tell him, don't worry.
Oh no, I feel actually really bad. I love you so much, Ryan. I'm so sorry. I did not mean to forget about you. Okay, so technically our second guest of this very hot topic theme, masculinity. I will say though that like when we decided on this theme, my brain was like, oh, we have to talk to Ashton. Like this is
cool.
100% needs to happen. And I had actually thought about you for our previous theme, which was religion as well. And I feel like today we can mostly talk about masculinity, but I would also like to talk a little bit about religion because that was our theme last month and it was also a super hot topic theme. But yes, today on the pod we have Ashton.
We're just
Colby.
a really controversial podcast.
Yeah.
You know, every month the hot topic.
Yeah, you can tell. But welcome, Ashton. We are so excited to talk to you today.
Thank you.
I think that first we can just start with like a little bit of a bio, and then I feel like just getting like a pure definition of masculinity from you might be helpful because that is something that we have been struggling to define.
Well, that's real. Yeah. So my name is Ashton Colby. I am a LGBTQ advocate, and I do work at the state level in Ohio and federally. I'm a trauma-informed yoga teacher. I'm also a transgender guy. So talking about masculinity today, like living last 10 years as a man, and then the first 20 years as my life as, trying to fit into female kind of life, is definitely what I think I can bring to the table today.
Oh, hell yeah. I feel like you do so much like video. Like I was just watching
the TikToks and all that.
Yes,
yeah.
Well, the TikToks, but like the
Laura, you sounded like such an old person. You do all of the video.
How you say that on video? Like I just like I was watching the video where it's like the black background and it's very like X versus Y, like fight it out. And I just like that. Do you get nervous for that kind of stuff? So that
mindset? Video project, I do. I use social media a lot for that kind of advocacy that I do because I want to reach everybody. And so one of the video projects I did that went like viral on YouTube is where I sat across the room from somebody who had been assigned female at birth, transitioned to male, and then they found like the evangelical faith and then decided they wanted to transition back to live as a woman. And then obviously I am so comfortable being a man and being trans, and I have no desire to detransition and go back to the way I was living. But we had a conversation about like, God made you a female, so you should stay female, and all these kind of things that we could definitely get into about like what even is a man, what is a woman, like why does any of this matter? And so definitely do like content creation on the side. So
what does
sorry, you go, Mel.
Oh, I feel like we were maybe going to ask the same thing, but I was just going to ask, we really struggled on our first episode to come up with like an actual definition of masculinity because when you Google it, it didn't feel like it was really what we were trying to say.
Totally.
Eventually, like we did search hard enough to find something that we felt kind of aligned, but I would love to hear from you kind of what masculinity has been, and if that like definition has evolved at all throughout your life.
That's a great question. Yeah. So I define or experience masculinity and femininity as energies. I feel like they're a quality that's universal. It's in plants, it's in nature, it's in humans. Like it's way more expansive than just like man, woman, humans. Like it's, for me, I like to say like divine masculine and divine feminine, because I really think they're like divine gifts or like really powerful divine energies. So to bring it back down to earth, masculinity for me is like qualities like that are very rational and linear and about taking action. And then femininity, like again, beyond gender binary boxes, it's more about like intuition, creativity, more of a flow type energy, less like linear and rational. And it's more about receiving intuition or just receiving from the world. And again, masculinity is more about like action and outwardly expressing. And so I think that there's this hyper focus right now on like, we need to get rid of masculinity in society. Masculinity in itself is the problem, but it's not the problem. We don't need less masculinity. We just need more conscious masculinity, more grounded, more like present masculinity. So there's nothing like inherently like wrong or bad or toxic with masculinity. It's when it's like really distorted, or there's like so much so reactive and about taking action that there's violence or there's like excessive anger and things like that. So yeah, how my definition or experience of masculinity has shifted from when I first came out as a trans man, like 10 years ago, it was, well, 11 years ago now, almost, is like, I thought in order for me to like be valid as a trans guy, I needed to then do everything that was like hyper masculine. So I like was wearing snapbacks and I was like chugging protein shakes and I was going to the gym for like 2 hours, 5 days a week. And I was trying to get like as big as I could. And I was trying to, I was, going through this second puberty around like 20 years old, 21, 22, 23. And that in itself, like if you are trying to be a guy in college, there's that culture. So I was trying to like, okay, that was what I saw. That was the culture that I thought was available to me. And I didn't see any other representation of any other options for expressing my masculinity. So I did at one point, even though I was like a female assigned at birth person, I still did dip into that unconscious masculinity and kind of was a douchebag at sometimes. Like even saying that, like, it's like, why do we use that term to describe, toxic masculinity? But like, I really then took a time in like 2015 and I stopped taking testosterone for like a year. And I just totally let go of all these external things that I was trying to do and just got to know my masculinity from a more integrated, grounded place. Like did a lot of yoga, meditated a lot, like did all that kind of getting actually in my body for the first time in my transition. Like there's a lot of disembodied masculinity and there's totally like embodied masculinity. You can definitely feel the difference in someone's energy. And so now I've gotten to meet my masculinity from a lens of like, I'm comfortable with who I am now. I'm a decade into my transition and I'm not transitioning anymore. I just am. So we could start there. Yeah. That's some background on why the heck I'm even talking to you. So
that was such a good, like, that was
beautiful.
The best definition for anything I've ever heard. Like that was so good. I Damn.
Thank you.
Also, your voice is so amazing. I just want to like sit and like listen to you tell me a story. Like, it's so calming.
Narrate an audiobook.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah.
Like that was my first thought.
Get Ashton on the call mouth.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna ask one follow-up, which is thinking back to when you were feeling pressure to like go to the gym, to wear snapbacks, etc. Do you feel like that pressure was coming more from like your internal perceptions of what masculinity was at the time, or was it more outward external pressure from like people around you or the communities that like were at your college or that you were a part of, or like a mix of both?
Yeah, no, that's an awesome question. I think it was what initially just comes to me, like a gut reaction to that question is like, I did not feel safe in my body when I first came out as a trans person, because my desire, like, why would I even pursue transition? Yes, it was for myself, but also like, I'm not living, on a deserted island without anyone else. Like, to be human is to interact with other people, and we live in a society and in communities. And so my desire, one of the major things, I wanted to be validated by other people. I wanted to be seen in my masculinity. I wanted people to know that that was how I felt about myself. And so I thought the only way that I can be, one, like physically safe, because I was scared that like if I transition and people don't know what my gender is, because there's that weird time where you're like, is that a boy? Is that a girl? Like, who are you? What are you? Like, then people were going to be violent towards me. And I was genuinely scared of that. And so I felt like, okay, the only way I can be safe is if I do the thing that is most rewarded. And that is like, get as much muscle as you can, and like take up as much physical space as you can. And don't give anyone a reason to question who you are. So go like really into the most masculine things that you could appear to do, whether they were completely authentic to me or not. And so when I started to get a little bit older and actually like realized that was exhausting too, like it wasn't, I was still in a state of fight or flight with that. I was doing it because I was afraid. And then anything you do out of fear, like, is not going to feel good. So that didn't feel awesome. And so I was like, what, I'm still seeking something. And it was, okay, you need to like allow yourself to grow your hair about a little bit longer. If you want to, you need to allow yourself to like, like I don't always want to wear like a snapback. I don't want to always, like, sometimes I want to wear like floral print, like shirts and stuff that for whatever reason, I'd feel physically safe to even explore.
It's really, I don't know. I think it's really sad that during like maybe the most vulnerable part of your transition, it's like you were more in survival mode than you were able to actually feel what you wanted, which like, I'm sure you're not the only one who's experienced that, but it is really, that's such a powerful experience, because you weren't able to like own how you were feeling because you had to think about the external like factor of safety, which is not something that like I have to think about that often as like a cis woman. I mean, like obviously there's safety and danger aspects to that, but in a totally different way for you. So, wow. Yeah.
I think that, I don't know, I'm trying to think of like that feeling that you get around someone that is clearly like exhibiting those like toxic, like the very, very like in your face masculinity, where you're like, what's under there? Like, what are you actually trying
what happened
to like,
to you? Who hurt
like
you?
what
Isn't,
and honestly, isn't that exhausting for those people to like be constantly like having that, like feeling like every day you have to wake up and you have to perform your gender in such a rigid way. Like it does, it like, when I think about those people, or when I go on a walk and I see people like that, and I'm just like, it's so clear that that's what's happening. I don't know what like it just makes me very sad, because I can't be like, hey, have you thought about like yoga? Like I can't go up to them and be like, that like you could have like an emotional conversation with someone. Like, I don't know if you've had that experience with your friends, but like, I want to bring you into that. But like, it just, I don't know. I can so understand that, like, in the early days of your transition, that was a safety aspect for you. But it makes me so sad that like it, I don't know. I feel like that is like, okay, so you were like protecting yourself. That is like such a valid reason. But for anyone else who's maybe like cis and still feeling that every day they have to wake up and do that performance, I'm just like, like, when will it end? Why?
Yeah, and I don't even think it's like consciously that you get up and you're like, I'm gonna perform like hyper masculinity to feel safe. Like there's not even like that level of awareness unless you are aware. Like maybe you're on the outside and you like can just feel in somebody's vibe that their energy is just off. Like it's just like I think about it, the visual always comes to me of like, it's almost like you get like a cheap book of matches that like are from, I don't know, they give out free, and you try to light them and they always bend and they're like cheap cardboard and they just burn out really quickly. And you're like, God, these are crap. Like, I wish I had a lighter or something that is more like actually gonna work to light this candle or light this bonfire or whatever it is. And it's just like, there's also masculinity that is, like a bonfire, that it's like deeper and more sustaining and actually gives off like warmth and there's like these tiny little sparks of masculinity that are like distorted and they just burn out. There's not a sense of power behind them that is real. And there's a lack of depth that you feel from, like you said, like, I wish I could just go up to that person and be like, have you had an intimate conversation with your friends? Have you like ever cried to anyone? Have you like gone to therapy or anything that like is depth and spaciousness and way more than just this like surface level caricature of masculinity. So I try to have compassion for people that I see like that. And sometimes it does take people experiencing like a profound amount of pain to then realize, like, to awaken them really to like that what they're doing isn't working. And so I hope that everyone will go on their own healing journey. But then, that takes then looking at yourself and realizing like, where am I cut off from my full humanity? And sometimes like looking at those places that like diving into it can be really scary. So I try to like, I guess, judge less, because I get how painful it is to take responsibility for all of that. So yeah.
Well, and it's a form of protection for the people who use it.
Yeah.
And like, I think back to the safety, it feels safe to have the masculinity as like, we were talking about this on the pod with Ryan, that like suiting up. And I think you're right that it's not every morning you don't like consciously think, okay, I need to suit up with my gender performance, but like you're consciously or unconsciously doing that in order to protect yourself from like vulnerability or like your community. Like there's so many different factors, but yeah, I just feel like the safety thing applies to people both who are like struggling with or like trying to process their gender, as well as people who are like presenting it in such like a hyper way. Like both sides are feeling unsafe in some aspect, and it's just like to what degree they take that, I think is the challenge.
For
and
sure.
there's I feel like I know that part of it is like, when we talk about masculinity and femininity, often we don't talk about, we talk about it in such a binary way, like women are feminine, men are masculine, but it's like every single person has aspects of being rational and linear and action taking and being intuitive and receptive and, you know, more in the flow, less linear, more creative. Like those are qualities or essences that everybody should allow themselves to have the space to tap into. And if you don't, you're so out of balance in just your way of being that you are disempowered. Like when I was talking about like the power aspect of it, you feel when somebody is just like, they're just going to burn out really quickly with it, or they're just like very quick to react, or like very, like there's just like a spark and then it fizzles out. Like that kind of masculinity or energy, it's because you're not balancing it with like, okay, then for me, how I experience is like, I need to, take action sometimes, but I also need to like replenish myself, and I need to tap into my intuition and my creativity and things that those are actual things that we don't give men, let's just say men for the sake of brevity, that we don't allow them to even tap into. And a lot of men are experiencing burnout as a result of that. Like they don't have they're not in tune with like the depth of their creativity, their emotions, their all of that.
I think you were so spot on talking about how, like, I believe you said this is like a humanity thing. Like we are disconnected from our humanity. And that I think is the biggest kind of point to drive home is when we see people. And I agree, like I see people that are kind of engaging in that behavior where they're putting on an act as though they're like a shell of sorts of like a certain type of person or a certain, I know, a stereotype, I guess. And you know that like there are deeper things within them. Douglas is drinking water behind me right now. It's so loud. But I think, can you guys hear it?
Can't hear it.
Oh my God, thank God. It's like
I wish I could though.
It's like ASMR, like, dog drinking water. But I think like it does make me sad. And it also makes me sad that those people as children weren't taught the tools that they needed to, engage in, productive behavior in their adult life. And also it makes me sad that they're kind of limiting themselves to whatever they're capable of processing, so I think that there's a lot of sadness and grief in kind of knowing and seeing that people aren't really willing to kind of let go of some of those old belief systems. And then there's also the aspect of if someone has the courage to do that and does that work, are they going to wake up one day and their community is not what they thought it was? That's very difficult as well, I think, of like, okay, well then how do I now engage with these people that used to be my best friends and now I don't know how to talk to them because we don't value the same things anymore, or they don't know how to speak to me, or this feels empty and shallow. And of course there's always those times that there's like breakthroughs. Like I don't think this is a linear process, but I think in terms of intention, like there's not much intention I feel going on in some of those relationships where it's like we're intentionally being vulnerable and meeting each other in new spots here. And a quick story, I don't know if Lara noticed this, but a few days ago we went to a concert and we were kind of surrounded by some of these guys that were just like, I don't know how else to explain it, but like very similar to what we were talking about, and kind of watching their behavior. Like I'm not around a lot of people like that. And so it did kind of feel like very like, what is happening? Like, what are they talking about? Like it's just very odd. But there was one song where one of the guys started crying in the song. And it was like, I had no idea that they were capable of like expressing emotion like that. And like his buddies kind of like patted his back a bit. And, but then I noticed kind of immediately after they were kind of like, I'm back to party, like very quick transition. And so I don't know. I just think it's a funny kind of thing to experience and notice in the world.
Did you feel like there was a sense maybe he wasn't like feeling into, I mean, you can't assume anyone's experience, but he wasn't giving himself space to feel the depth of those tears. Was that your interpretation of the experience?
Yeah, I mean,
like I jump back into like,
yeah, I feel
fist
like it
bumping with
reminded me of something of like a, you know, this is the way that I'm allowed to express this emotion. Like clearly he was like going through something. And I think sometimes, I don't know, we all know this, like music can just pull it out of you, or there can be some feeling that is for some reason a safe space to express that. And then I feel like as soon as the song is over, like, oh, that safe space is gone, you know, like that was my excuse in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you about this, Ken, because this person was standing right in front of me, and from just like everyone's actions and words that I was like, it felt like I was just like watching a movie that whole time building up to like the actual headliner playing, because it was so much of like the hyper masculinity, like very like bro-y energy that I'm literally not around it now that I'm like even in college, I don't even feel like I put myself ever in those spaces of like a like kind of like a fratty energy. And I don't know, it was just like, it was so interesting that it was clear that during that song, his friends knew that that song was important to him. Like when they started playing, they were all like kind of like trying to like turn inwards to him, but it was still all he got was a pat on the back. And yet he's like visibly crying. Like I don't know, it was a very, very interesting thing to watch. And even the people that were standing next to me who had that same kind of like, I don't know, in your face hard energy that I did not like being so close to them in proximity, because I feel like you can feel some of that sometimes. There was one song that talks about like a relationship to mothers and a relationship to brothers and sisters, and it was clear that that song was like hitting them in a way, all of them, but they didn't know how to like connect to each other with that feeling. And I think that like your explanation of the match is so spot on, because you know, they all have the fuel source of like having more. You know, it's clear that there's something there, but there's still like a blockage of like, I think it's honestly, it's safety or it's perception or it's reputation or it's something. But yeah, I just think it sucks that, I think it really sucks that when you think of just the word masculinity, that is the definition that is put into it. When it's like, it's true, masculinity is the energy and femininity is the energy, and we all want to have a little bit of that energy in different proportions for all of us. Right. But like it's so separate from like the gender piece that we're all so obsessed with thinking about. Like, and yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
it's so then if I think towards like, what does a solution look like, or what does it look like for all of us to experience more of like a sense of safety in our own experience with whatever our own, ratio of masculinity or femininity is like our collective humanity is disembodied. Like we're so much in our heads and in our thoughts and just in our minds, and not as much in our actual physical bodies. So a lot of us are in this like, fight or flight sympathetic nervous system response. And when you can't even feel like you're safe to be present in your body and like feel the physical sensations of those emotions arising, like when that guy was crying at the concert, like, if you're disconnected from like, what does it feel like to cry in my body? Does my chest get tight? Do I like, feel warmer? Whatever the like actual sensations are, like, then when the song's over, that you can just, flip the switch and disconnect again. And because you didn't allow yourself to feel it all the way on all the levels, like maybe logically you're like, I am crying water is coming from my eyes. I taste the salt, but then, and I know I feel sad, but what the heck does it actually feel like? And so the more that everyone, but talking with masculinity, like people just feel like they can feel their feet on the ground, feel your legs in space, like feel like you're less reactive, and you're more responsive. There's like you're taking it just one more pause, breath, space, have this depth of like awareness and like less judgment of what am I experiencing? Do I want to act out in anger? Do I want to or do I want to feel what the heck I'm actually feeling and like sit with it and be okay with the fact that like I am sad and it hurts in my body? Like you're less likely to like act out in a way that is distorted or hurts other people when you feel safe to feel all your feelings in your body. So
yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that, and in the same breath, I feel like at this moment I'm also the frat boy who won't feel anything in my body right now, because
that's so real. Like
it can hurt so badly,
totally,
especially if you have been pouring water into your dam and then one day you're like, okay, walls down, like let's feel it all. That can literally feel like it's gonna kill you. So like I am not like in no way am I like like I feel like I am that person who will let out a few tears at the party or at the concert, not at the party, maybe at the party, they're crying too, but like I'll let out a few tears and then it's like walls back up. Like we can't actually deal with this right now because it's too much. And like it's so weird to be like to notice that about them and then be like, oh, I'm also that person right now, 100%. Like
it's sometimes I have to set a timer, like literally like I'm gonna feel this shit in my body for 5 minutes. And then if I don't, like if I feel myself, if I do it for longer than that, like I am gonna spiral. So sometimes there is value in being like, okay, but then I'm gonna come back and like that's why therapy is so awesome, because then for an hour you're just going to feel your feelings and you're, more or less safe with another person holding space for you with that intention. And then you can go leave and go about the rest of your day. And like, but if we don't like maybe you don't have to be like in the depths of your trauma all the time, like 24/7, because I could totally easily do that just as well. Like anyone could. It's just that, creating these like more intentional spaces and little blocks to actually let yourself go there is key. Like instead of just doing it unconsciously, like, oh, I happen to be crying in a song at a concert, but then I have to turn it back off. Like you could be more present with it if you like actually invite those spaces into your life just little by little. So no, I don't suggest anybody just go like, I'm just going to be wide open, because it does feel like you're dying. Let's be real. Like it's like they say, like ego death, like, it feels like you're like truly, it can be really scary. And, if you're someone that is a woman or a trans person or a Black person, like all of the above, like, and you've experienced marginalization, that you're kind of always in this, fighting with your trauma against the world of just like feeling like you're even worthy to feel your feelings, then it can get really gritty sometimes, but it's, we're all worthy of feeling into it, and we just need more cisgender, white, straight, able-bodied men to do it too, and like hold space for everyone to feel safe to do it. See your puppy in the background.
Oh, yeah, that's Douglas.
I was just going to say, Ashton, to your question about, or like thought about what do we actually do about this? I keep going back to that. I like think that there's layers, obviously, for us moving towards our humanity, like on an individual level. Like, obviously, I think people, if they should go to therapy and like talk to like really work within themselves on that and like really try to dig into like what their performance in society looks like and why they're doing that. But then on like a community level, like making sure you're supporting people for like expressing who they are, how they present themselves, etc. And then on like a societal level, like I'm sure we can talk a little bit about your advocacy too here, but like what laws and policies like validate that we should be expressing who we are and what that looks like in society, and also just like maybe altering how like during childhood, like how are we allowing young people to express who they are. So I feel like I keep going back to like there's no solution just on like one level. I feel like people have to do it within themselves, communities have to like look into it, and then societally we need to like slowly shift more towards the like acceptance / support piece.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely starts with like on the individual level, like taking radical responsibility for your life. Like I don't get an excuse for being in my disconnected, hyper toxic masculinity just because I'm trans, and I don't get a free pass because I lived 20 years as a woman. Like you talked about like the community, like, and there's a brotherhood among like transgender, masculine, trans men, whatever, but I haven't stayed friends with all of them because some of them haven't given themselves space to really like do the work and like look at their lives and like, are you happy with yourself and your relationships, and are you happy with where you are and your purpose and how you relate to others in the world? And there was a point where I didn't take responsibility for just all of it my whole life. And so, yeah, I lost a lot of like trans guy friends along the way, but I also gained a lot of like super deep, like profound, like soul family level relationships with people that are also trans masculine and other trans men. And like, but I connected with those people only because I first like looked at my own shit. And then once, people do that on an individual level, again, they can build community, and then that community can influence larger social trends. And I'm just called to say it again from my own, like, just like masculinity is not, again, the problem. This is more for like the listeners, like there's nothing wrong with masculinity. We don't need less of it. We actually just only need more like people to start having a deeper awareness of like, how does masculinity manifest in your life? And like, are you happy with it? Like, if you want to wear snapbacks and chug protein shakes, and that is like whatever you want to do, that if that's authentic for you, there is nothing inherently wrong with any of those activities. It is just the intention behind it. Like, are you doing it again from a place of fear, disconnected, trauma, like, or are you doing it from a place of like, this feels amazing and awesome? Like, some days that does feel awesome. Some days I just like want to be like really in that, and go to a CrossFit class. And then sometimes I just want to like go to like, a yin yoga class where I'm just like laying like in the fetal position on a yoga mat, like crying with like everyone else in the room. Like, sometimes I need a little bit of either or. So just I want everybody to like as a society, like we get more comfortable with like the entire, like, that's why trans people were, I think, rising in awareness. Like, people know that we exist now is because we are, as uncomfortable as it is for this social change to happen, we're getting collectively more comfortable with the fact that like it's not these it's not these total opposite polarities of masculine and feminine. It's like there is some space between that. There is some breadth between that. It's steeper. So reflecting that, the like we, you.
And I feel like if you talk to most people, like people feel that they have both, like, and it's a spectrum. Like it just, you have to like actually accept. I think your term of radical responsibility is so true, because we talked to Ryan about this too. I think it took him a long time to acknowledge that he wanted to be seen as an empathetic person, and that was something that he was okay with having a perception, like having people perceive him like that. And he knew that inside. It was just really hard for him to like get to the point where he was comfortable with that. So I think, but that starts, to your point, Ashton, like that starts with you. Like no one else can make you process that. No one else can get you there except for yourself. So like with all of social change, I think it starts with, regardless of where you are on any spectrum, like it starts with you acknowledging the work that you have to do in a variety of different things.
Yeah, I have to go ahead.
No, you go.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, like, there are still times, like, as I've allowed myself to tap into like my softer, more receptive, more intuitive, creative energy that you could call like feminine, I've had to sit with like, there are men, there is society that makes me feel bad about myself for leaning into that. And it's my responsibility to like just sit with how uncomfortable it is to be called derogatory names, like shaming my femininity because but like it hurts, but I only then like have a choice whether I abandon that truth or if I only then use that as an invitation to lean more deeper into all of who I am. And so yeah, sometimes it's like scary to even like let myself, especially like as a trans guy, like there's still that little wounded part of me that is 21 years old that doesn't want to have anything related to femininity associated with me. But yet when I like live it and embody all of me, feminine, masculine, whatever, like I feel better. Like, but there's still that outward pressure that gets in your brain. So yeah. But
well, and I think too, like, well, just to start off on that comment, that is, a tremendous amount of work to consistently be monitoring your system, other people's like opinions, whatever they're going to say. And like, honestly, it makes me angry. That's like, even though it is such a courageous decision, it's like, you shouldn't have to do that. Like, you shouldn't have to like do that part of the work. And that makes me very just upset that it's like, I don't know, that's like more energy, emotional energy spent that you could also be spending doing other things, even though I think it is such a courageous thing. Of course he like starts as soon as I start talking. I swear he knows. But what I was going to say earlier, a couple random things. Let me just grab his thing and push it away for a second.
Douglas. Oh, Douglas. We finally got Makena's butt in the YouTube.
He got it under my dresser. So, what I was going to say is like, I think in conversations like these, it is really easy to be like, and this is the roadmap to like feeling your feelings, like let's work on our felt sense, like all of these big, like almost systemic kind of themes that we're talking about, which is phenomenal. But then I also think that there is an aspect of like, it is not so clear a lot of times. And I think what you really have to do, in my opinion, is just consistently meet yourself where you are to kind of like further that, or like flex that muscle, strengthen that muscle of vulnerability, or whatever it may be. Guys, I'm so sorry.
We can't hear him at all.
Yeah, he's fine.
Extraordinarily loud.
We can't hear him at
crazy. Okay. So the other thing that I was going to say too is like, Lara, you mentioned like, well, I feel like I'm those kind of people right now because I'm not able to feel my emotions. And I would argue that information that your system is giving yourself of like, we are not at the capacity to be able to process this, is like exactly what you need. Like, there is no world where like someone is going to be able to process 24/7 the way that our society currently stands. And I think that that is exactly what you should be doing. And that knowledge of like, yeah, like I'm not at a place, like I have to kind of keep them in check. Like, to me, that is not a bad thing at all. That is you being so like aware of that is the work. Like, that is it. And I can't remember if I said this, but my last thing I was going to say is like this idea of like, I don't know, I just keep landing on it's hard either way, right? Like those people that we saw at the concert, like they are having a hard time. And if they meet and like look into themselves and start to explore, like that also will be hard, and not in a bad way necessarily. But I think that we forget that like we're uncomfortable, whatever way we look at things. And to kind of think that there's all these people who are talking about thinking that they're not uncomfortable, I think is not accurate. I think that whenever we're disconnected from ourselves in that way, there's some level of discomfort. And the longer we push it, like it'll express itself in whatever way it needs to.
I think we can maybe ask like one more question after this, but the thing that like in this conversation that I'm like, what, Lara, what can you do right now to like try and like somehow help with this? And it might seem kind of stupid, but it's been like my mentality this last week is just like, even if like to me it's like, you know, it's frustrating to hear that, like it's frustrating to hear some of the conversations of the people at the concert, or it's really frustrating to hear that like, Ashton, that some of your guy friends are, you know, maybe not kind to you as a guy who is embodying some of your femininity. Or it's frustrating to hear that like, I don't know, it's frustrating to hear people at work or around who like say things about like, oh, well, you can't do that, like that's like, you know, that's not masculine, or that's quote like that would be too like girly of you to do. I don't know, just like words like that is all really disappointing to hear. But like me as a person, like all I can try and do is like, as much as I want to get mad at those people, I just like, or get like frustrated, I guess, like all I can do is just try and like show them a little bit of love for like the parts of themselves that are shining through, and be like, hey, that little like beam of light, like I love that, keep doing that. Like, because we keep talking about this stupid concert, but the person that was standing next to me, like he wanted to talk to me about the female opener, the very first person that went on, and how much like, you know, I don't feel like that person's friends really cared about the opener, but like, you know, I'm like, you know, female presenting, I'll talk to you about the female opener. I was just like, I did not want to talk to this person at all, but I also knew that like I wanted to love that part of him that was coming through, of like wanting to talk about how cool the female opener was. Like, and I just think that if we try and do like a little more of that, like it could hopefully, fingers crossed, like encourage all those people to start like writing their own script for whatever their masculine and feminine energies want to bring to the table. And like, you're right that there's no, you know, there's no excuse. Just because like you were going through a transition, that doesn't excuse some like toxic or disconnected masculine behaviors. But I also just think like, you know, even those people that I'm sure you talk to who think that, God doesn't love you because of XYZ. Like you, I think, do such a good job of just being like, actually, God loves me so much and loves you so much. And I know that like you're coming at me because you don't think that God actually loves you right now. And I'm going to tell you, like, I love you and like you should love you too, kind of a thing. Like it's just all about, I don't know, trying to see people, like make people see that a little bit more, which it's tough. And you're right, Ken, you can only do it in like little bits and pieces, because otherwise it's too much. You will fully spiral.
Yeah, like it has to, like when I saw a dad tell his little boy, in the grocery store, like, oh, don't cry, but from a shaming place of like, boys are not supposed to cry, like man up, all that crap. Like I still like, the best thing that I could have done in that moment was not to go have a whole conversation about like gender studies with like that father in the middle of like Target or whatever. In that moment, with where I was at, the best thing I could have done was comfort myself that made me sad to see that. And like self-preservation, I'm always like, self-preservation is liberation, because like even being able to talk to like really conservative people that I do and stuff, Laura, like it's because I like care for myself so deeply. And maybe sometimes it's like not doing anything is even more like, if you don't have the energy, like just take care of yourself first before you try to like go change all of society. And like you have to be replenished before you can go and like be effective. Like I take a lot of breaks, and like I'm going to take a nap after this, like just to care for myself. So
yeah. Heck yeah. All right. Any last questions, Malcolm?
Yeah, I feel like maybe this could be a good close-up question, but Ashton, I would love to hear a little bit about your advocacy work and like what you enjoy advocating for the most, what you're really passionate about advocating for right now.
Yeah. In more than half the states in the United States, even though you can get married like to the same gender, you can be fired for being gay, for your gender identity, your sexual orientation. And people think like, oh, it's 2022. Of course, we have these like basic human rights level protections based on these like inherent things, like who you love, what your gender is. But we don't have comprehensive federal protection. So that's one of the things that, I want there to be less of this patchwork where there's like half the states you have these protections and half of them you don't. And people actively want you to be able to fire somebody if you don't agree with their sexual orientation or their gender presentation or something like that. So that's what I want to see, because there is great, like, I don't really think that like changing the laws like is necessarily gonna like change hearts, but it's a profound like book end to the things where we can look back and say, okay, this is something we collectively know is important to preserve and to protect. And so yeah, I want to look to that, and I want more people to see and inform their policy when they're voting or when they're making laws, to see me in the fullness of my humanity and see me as like a person that just happens to be trans. And just to briefly touch on it, like there's a lot of conservative, like Christian religious influence in public policy that doesn't see me as like first like a beloved child of God. They see me as this like deviant, like disconnected, whatever. And I have a strong like connection to love and faith and all these things that like I should have the ability to fully live and express. So, yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm just like so happy that you exist and that you are like doing such essential stuff. And I really, really hope and know, because you know your self-care, that like you're taking full care of all of you.
Taking a
and
pause
yeah.
for the cause. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
You've given us so many like potential titles this episode.
I know.
So many.
I'm
Gold.
overwhelmed
Gold
with all of the
gold.
title options. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really happy we had you on finally. And I'm really happy I met you almost a year ago. And
yeah,
I
I'm
think
sure
this was
I'm gonna
great.
get to Denver
Yes,
area
come
sometime.
back to
Yeah,
Colorado. Come visit Ken and
yeah,
Douglas and I.
definitely.
All right. So
Thank you so
Where can
much.
wait,
Yeah, we
Ashton,
need-
where can the
Oh.
people find you?
True.
Yeah.
I was like, Lara, I feel like we can't wrap up without that.
My bad. Yeah. Where can people find you?
All like Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. If you just search my name, it's just Ashton James Colby. So my full name spelled out, and you could just go to ashtoncolby.com as well and get in contact with me. And yeah.
Hell yeah. You have a great website too.
Thank you.
Go to Ashton's
I
website.
did that myself. Clinking around.
Hell
Oh my gosh, I need to
Love
go
it.
look at it right this second.
It's good. Okay. All right. Thank you so
Just
much,
on
Ashton.
Wix, yeah.
Yeah.
Have a great rest
Ashton,
of your day.
Thank you so much.
You too. Okay, that's it, y'all. Thank you.